Perfect.
What's going on, the Pivot Project? This is Felipe, and I'm here with my good friend James. Thank you for having us over.
Appreciate you having me on.
Awesome, cool. So let's start. If you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, and I guess a quick 30-second, or actually more than 30-second elevator pitch about yourself, that'd be awesome.
Okay, perfect. So a bit of background about me. I'm from Halifax, proudly. Spent a bunch of time there, went to school. Spent 18 months at KPMG.
Cool.
In the audit practice there. I was mercifully brief stint in audit.
Okay.
Not for me. Moved here into KPMG's mid-market investment bank. Spent 2.5 years there. Enjoyed it much more, but knew that I didn't really want to do that forever.
Okay.
So had a bit of like a catalyst moment where about 18 months before I left, or a bit more than that, had a really good friend of mine into town, and I was trying to see him, and he was getting deployed in the military before his first one. We were best friends growing up, and so tried to see him, didn't get to.
Yep.
Work kept me away from it, and I just took a step back, and I was just like, okay, do I want to be giving up this for what I'm doing right now? And I've been mulling over an idea in my head, and I was just like, okay, I think that's time to kind of go after this and try to make it into something. So kept working full time and just worked on weekends and evenings. Had a bit of a support group. Got a small team working together to help me out, and ended up sort of getting more and more of it de-risked until a certain point where I was like, okay, I can go talk to my bosses about this. They're really, really flexible.
Yep.
And so I said, hey, this is what I'm working on. Here's when I think I'm going to be leaving. Want to give you guys a good heads up. They're really nice about it. Allowed me to actually in my last month spend a lot of time during the week working. They're like, as long as you get what you need done, we don't really care what time it's finished, which is better because most of these places, like very traditional, you got to be in, you got to bum in the chair at 9 a.m. and they want to see you there. Well,
Totally.
But for me, they let me take my daytimes and spend it on the business, because then I could meet a bunch more people, and nobody really had to worry where I was, and it was really, really fortunate. So got to do that, and then once I got to a point where I was confident that we could actually make a good run at this, was able to exit off the job and start full time.
And what was the idea? What was it that you started?
So originally it was a budgeting tool.
Okay.
And then, long story short, there's not a lot of money in helping people save money, right? Like took me a little while to figure it out. It sounds pretty obvious, but the key was basically, we want to help people save, and then how do you make money off of that? You help them invest. And then I sort of shopped that around a bit and was working with some developers to kind of with that idea, but I realized that really at that point, trying to create like an application for a phone as a non-technical person wasn't going to work, because we have to rely entirely then on a developer, and I wanted to try to switch that. So I actually thought, okay, why don't we make step 2, step 1, just help people invest. Started working into that, looking into it a lot more, reading a ton about it, found this huge information gap, saw that nobody else was addressing it, and now we're addressing it for both financial advisors and normal people soon. So.
Okay, and then, so was this something when you went to school, what did you go to school for again?
For accounting.
Accounting. Okay, that makes sense. So what happened was you first graduated, you went to the corporate world, and then you realized this is not for me.
No.
It's great, it's not for me. And then you started thinking about this idea, you started working on it while you were full-time job, and then you went for it.
Yeah.
Awesome. And then now you pivoted from first trying to help people save money to then help them invest.
Exactly.
Okay, cool. And this is kind of what's going on right now.
Yeah. So we've just gone through a name change.
Okay.
We're actually in the process of it. So we're known as CapIntel now. Essentially, so we have sort of two problems, but what we're trying to do and we're trying to solve is, if you have your money invested right now in a fund, I can ask you, are you happy? You can say yes or no.
Okay.
I can say, compared to what? You give me the S&P 500 or the Dow Jones or the TSX or the market, and I can say, okay, that's great, but What about compared to all the other funds out there that match your investment criteria that you could have invested in? How are you doing in comparison to them, right? Because I think a lot of people who, let's say somebody who's got a conservative investment style, so they're really focused on keeping their money and they're willing to forego making higher returns and able to keep that money. Like that's really what's called, and that's called principal protection, is what it's known as. So if they, let's say the market's up 20% and they're up 6%, and they're kind of going, well, what happened to that 14%? And maybe 6% is the top performing fund or the top performing portfolio in that sort of their exact needs that are specific to them. And so maybe they're actually knocking it out of the park, but the problem is that they're not taking that extra risk. They're not accepting the risk. So there's no comparison to that. There's no visibility, which can lead to a lot of frustration. Maybe they're making 6%, but all the other conservative funds are making 12%. You don't know. And what we're trying to do is to apply an independent ranking system and have an objective view to show people here are the top performers. And then also when they're in that section or when you've invested with them, to look at that top performer and ensure that they remain a top performer. And if they don't, then to try to get you to move.
Okay.
And then also to warn you when things like market rallies are happening, because in market rallies, so that means when all the stocks are going up, or not all, but many, most, then individuals who have conservative risks, risk tolerances, they actually tend to go moderate. They actually increase their risk tolerance because they want to capture a bit of that, because they don't want to have that market's up 20, I'm up 6. They want to, and so then you can also help them try to identify that and just trigger to them, listen, this is what most people do. And the beauty of that is that when you have 6% and the market's up 20, like you got to make that call. You said, no, I don't want that, because you know what? If it's up 20, it could go down 20. And if it's going down 20, I'd rather be, no return or down 6 than down 20. And so it puts the control back in people's hands, and it makes it easier for them to make those calls. So that's really what we're trying to do from a holistic perspective.
Cool.
And what we're also trying to do is we're trying to help financial advisors now pick better funds for their clients. So using a similar methodology to allow them to pick the top performing funds and to assist their clients for those people who don't want to do it by themselves and want to have a person who they can go talk to.
Got it. So that's what you said at the beginning is both for the end consumer, I guess, and then also these advisors.
Exactly.
Covering both. Okay, cool. Let's go back to when you said that you were full-time, and then you said you had this idea. How long did you have the idea of like maybe I want to start my own thing? Have you been an entrepreneur since you were a kid, or how did it work out?
Yeah, so I've always wanted to run a business since I can remember.
Yep.
I think confirmed like probably grade 4, something like that. It was
Cool.
a very, very long time. And for the longest time, I actually wanted to go in, get a CA, do some time in a corporate firm, get a nice MBA, and then kind of inject myself into a corporate ladder to try to work my way up to like trying to run a public company or something along those lines. And I think in the last 5 years, that idea started to shift a bit. I was helping my dad, who's got a very small biotech company. I was helping him out, go through some of the problems, and my mind started thinking a bit more about, actually it'd be really, really interesting to start something up because I'm able to accomplish all the things that I've always wanted. Like, what I think is really cool about running a business is that I come from a family of academics.
Okay.
So both my parents are health researchers. So they're sort of tackling an unsolvable problem. They both work in frailty, right? And so they're into this problem that really is extremely difficult to solve. There's not necessarily going to be a way to solve it, but they can kind of fight and mitigate and make some wins here. And that sort of infinite interest or infinite problem is something that's always been, to me, associated with happiness and career fulfillment. So I see business as being that exact same way, just out of the academic and health sciences thing. It's you have ever-changing competition, you have an ever-changing market, your consumers are changing. Like, it's constantly fixed. You're never going to get to a position and just be able to stop. And so I think that's what really attracted me to this idea. And then really it came down to forming my own business, came down to really timing. I had a small idea when I was in the middle of writing my CA exams, and I thought, okay, just write the CA exams.
Yeah.
You're like 2 months out. Just get this because it's going to pay dividends. And it turns out that when I looked into it a bit more after I'd passed the CA exams, there was another company that had done it and launched that had a lot more money than I would have had. So smart, right? To make sure that you're not derailing your entire career just on a whim. And then when I had this other idea, it struck at the right time. I had a bit of a catalyst with this issue, and then it helped me get out and really sort of kick me to work hard on it. So it can be pretty hard. Like when you are working a job, investment banking, the hours are pretty intense, and I think you can feel pretty drained. And when you start to sort of get your mind out of the current job you're in and start to think about the next one, it's really hard to maintain that discipline and stay focused at work, because you never know what's going to happen. Like maybe the idea has the exact same thing that my last idea had before that. Somebody else comes out with it. And now if you've been trying to wean your way out of a job, and by underperforming, not caring, not showing the performance that you used to show, you might get fired, and then you're just out, you have no idea, and you have no job. So you really got to be careful. So that was the sort of balance that I tried to do. It was really hard. It was really, really hard. But I think that discipline and making sure that I was waiting until I've gotten to a stage where my bosses know they're supportive, and I still talk to them today about questions, because now that I'm out, they have a small business essentially. I mean, they're within a firm, but they still have to hustle. They still have to get some revenue in. So I can talk to them, use their contacts. But I think that getting to the point where now I'm confident that we've actually got a good idea, and we're starting to see traction. We've got a lot of things, and we have issues, but we have a lot of success we're going through right now too. That's, I think, the reason is because I held the line for long enough that I was able to get this idea to happen. Because if I had left right away, I would have been making a budgeting app.
It's funny going back to when you said that you felt like from the 4th grade you felt like you were an entrepreneur and stuff like that, and you knew you wanted to run your business. I remember when my mom used to buy me gums, and I lived in Florida for 4 years at Sam's Club, so like a Costco. And I used to sell those gums, and like I used to have all of this like $1 bills when I was like, I don't know, like 10 years old. So definitely I can relate to that. But what you were saying about living in good terms and leaving doors open, I'm a huge believer in that, because it's all about communication. Same thing happened to me. Like all the jobs that I had in the past, if I look back, I created great relationships, and I wanted to let them know the reason why I was leaving, being very open, and I'm still friends with pretty much everybody. And I'm happy I did it that way, because again, it's communication.
Well, if you are in a company and you're asking to start a business, you might as well go up to your boss and say, I want to drive a NASCAR. It's something that they just cannot offer you. You can't. If you want to start a business, no business can offer you that. You need to just go start it, right? And so they might try to incentivize you, which is fine. Maybe it turns out that you go there, you want to start a business. Most people understand most businesses fail. Maybe you're passionate about it, maybe you're not. You go mention to your bosses, they really want you, and then you get a raise or you get a promotion. Like it might actually end up, that's also good. That's a great outcome as well. But I think that when you're asking somebody to start a business, it's so far away from what they can offer you that they can only really be supportive. You're not, unless you're going out there to, I don't know, steal a bunch of their staff and start a competitive business. But essentially, if you're going into a adjacent industry or something that's complementary, I mean, they might look at you as a future client. They might look at you as just a friend. There's so many options. So I think that leaving, it's the more strategic, and it's also the more disciplined way is to leave with a good reputation with contacts, because you never know where you're going to need to talk to people, and it's always better to build bridges than.
And the thing is, they are entrepreneurs, so they know exactly. And for the most part, from my experiences, they were in the same position I was, and they took the same steps. They had a full-time job. They felt like they could bring more value on their own, and so it's just, again, communication. Now, talking about your idea, did you kind of find that need, like people were needing, or was it something you were always thinking of, or how do you come across the idea of the business?
Yeah,
or
so
did you pivot?
So the way that we started out, I had talked to a financial advisor years ago, and I kind of got a bit of an insight, and I went, okay, well, I'm not really sure what's going on here, so I always had a bit of a curiosity. And then when I started reading more about it, I could see that there was this issue. And then I started interviewing people. And then I could see that other people had this issue. And then we started talking to financial advisors, so we could see that they have a similar issue that we can also solve. So that was kind of it. Was honestly just a lot of reading, because I like this space. I think it's meaningful. That's something that's really important to me.
Yeah.
Helping people save money, helping people make proper investment decisions, providing more clarity, making it more efficient. I think to me it's very meaningful, and it's an important and impactful business, because you can help a lot of people achieve a lot of goals and give them potentially the extra returns, allow them to get to their retirement faster or whatever, putting kids through school, buying a home. Very important stuff that's impactful to people and actually helpful. So that was important to me. So I always liked the area. And then when I got this idea and I started reading, like there's tons of information out there if you know where to look. And one of the things at KPMG that we used to do a lot of was market research. And so I'd actually had kind of developed a system that allowed myself to do that efficiently and quickly. So I was able to leverage my experience and do that. So that was kind of where the idea came from, was really just working through being in this space and then being open. And I think that's been really helpful, because even when we started pivoting, like our original problem we're trying to solve, we're now helping financial advisors doing it, and we never thought that was going to happen. So by doing that, that's another pivot. So I've been trying to be pretty flexible and not sort of like hug on to one idea and ride that into the ground. Like I gotta remain flexible, and if we end up, I've always said, if we end up selling hot dogs, like so be it. That's how we're going to keep the lights on. We're going to do it. If it's totally out of where we ended up starting, then that's what the market's telling us.
Well, that's how it is nowadays. If you look, let's say, for example, at Amazon, started selling books. Now they just bought Whole Foods, and it's just about being like pivoting and seeing where the need is key. So there are a lot of people that are in a job, full-time job. They have an idea, they have bills, and they say, I can't leave my job right now because I have bills to pay. So what's your advice for somebody maybe that was in your position, or somebody that is looking to start their company, their idea? What would you tell them?
The first thing I would say is start to do some research.
Yeah.
The very first thing you need to do is identify the problem, and then more importantly, be able to articulate that problem to other people. That's the first stage, and you have to read a ton about it. Then after that, start to socialize it at parties, within your friend group, and you're going to find people are actually pretty excited about these ideas pretty quick. And if you're able to articulate it better, it's going to help you get more people and get more interest. Then you can start to get a bit of a team, because you need to just understand you're not going to have enough time. You're working a full-time job. You may be working more than full-time. You're not going to have enough time to do this entirely by yourself. So you need to pull some people in.
Yep.
After that, it really comes down to getting to a point where you're understanding that, okay, I have a team, we've got a direction, and we used to meet, for example, I used to work evenings and weekends on this, and then I'd always meet with my team on Sunday afternoons. We'd sit down, and then that sort of helps you legitimize it in your own brain, and you'll start to hear inputs from other people, and you get to get that team, that camaraderie. Once you've got that, from my experience, it's going to start to accelerate a bit. And the momentum of the other people and more interest is going to get you more interested. At that point, it's the hardest part. And that's when you need to put in a plan. So we created a 90-day plan. And I said, okay, here are my goals for the next 90 days. And in 90 days, I'm quitting. And I think my 90-day plan went to like 100 days or something. It was close.
Yep.
But that was when you really buckle down, because in order for you to get there, the hours you need to pull forward are immense, and you can't do it forever. So you need to time it, and you need to hold yourself to it, and you need to just get ready to grind. So you go there, tell your friends you're going to be offline. You let people know I've got to work on this, and then it's the hardest part, really, and that's when you're advancing it. But you have to remember, you have to keep your full-time job.
Yep.
and you have to fulfill that. And you honestly can't let them know this. They need to not have an idea that you're doing this, because one of the most powerful things, one of the most important ways that I was able to get endorsed by the people that I worked with was when 3 weeks out, or whenever I think it was 3 weeks out, I let sort of the general group know, or 4 weeks out. Like, I gave them a lot of time.
Yep.
And obviously it depends on the employer. Some will just tell you, okay, we'll see you. If you tell them, hey, I want to go in 6 weeks, they're like, no, just, security escorts you out right there. That's your own discretion. But when they realized that I was doing all this and nobody noticed on my job, that was when they're like, okay, that's a really good thing to do. And that's when you build a lot of goodwill, because they understand how much that takes, and they understand that it's a huge distraction. And it comes down to, like, for me, it was just a rigorous. I read a ton about how to stay alert at work, how to stay from feeling lethargic. Walk every 5 minutes for every hour, I think it is. Keeps you more engaged. Like, little things like that, because your heart's not going to be into it. Keep your body in it, right? Keep your mind focused if you can, and then it's just discipline. And then that's really the hardest part, is trying to have these two pots in the boil, and you're getting emails from one job and you're thinking about the other one, and you've got to react. And in investment banking, it's really kind of go, and not necessarily like a lot of excuses. You kind of just have to have things ready. So that was the hardest part, and I think get it to a stage. Doesn't matter how much you hate your job. If you do, don't leave it. Wait. Just keep chipping away, keep working on it, because people will ask you, how do you have time to do this? And the fact of the matter is that if you want to start a business, you have to find the time, you have to figure it out. And you can't do that by burning a bridge or by making a rash decision. It needs to be methodical, it needs to be thought out, and then allow yourself to take the risk. But I think that so many people just want to walk in and just
the magic key. And the thing is, like, what amazes me is, like, if the people that ask, like, how do you do it, like, where do you get the time? I ask them, what do you do after 5 p.m.? Like, once you finish work, I mean, you're gonna go to sleep. Maybe I go to sleep late, but let's say, for example, if you go to sleep early, I would say early. I call it early 10 p.m. That's 5 hours. What are you gonna do in like, you have so much time.
Oh yeah.
So I like that. The other thing I heard was, not only you said do a lot of research and reading, but then also it sounds like also execution. Like, not just reading, because a lot of people can consume books, consume motivational speakers or videos, and like, it's also executing.
100%. Yeah, that's the key point. I mean, it's taking your idea, figuring out how to articulate your idea, executing to get a team on board. Then you start interviewing your prospective clients, because they're the ones who are ultimately going to know what they want and they don't want, and you need to ask them, you need to talk, and they're the ones who are going to figure it out. And maybe they always talk about how sometimes it's about selling people things they don't know they need, but you're still going to be able to have a slight indication of that when you're interviewing them. Like, I think you can't just sort of make something up, because remembering that, I think there were two books that I read that were really important. One was called Build the Fort, and the other one was The Lean Startup.
Yep.
And I think that the beauty of being in a job and having an idea is you have to have the lean methodology. Like, you can't afford to spend time without it. So you have to be very efficient with your time. And so doing a ton of market research up front really, really helps. And I think that can help you avoid the plague that many startups have, which I've heard a ton of, and that I've actually seen, where they have a product that nobody wants. And if you're going to build, you better know somebody's going to want it. Otherwise, or be close. You're never going to have for sure. There's going to be a leap of faith at some point, but you got to have that thing. So yeah, it's totally about executing. Don't spend too much time doing market research. You kind of got to get to a point where your gut feels good and that you can articulate. And once you can articulate, read about some stuff every once in a while. Keep your ear to the ground, but don't spend hours and hours doing it. Just start to talk to people.
Now, going back a little bit, you said you gave yourself 90 days. Was that because of financial reasons you needed 90? Like, where did that day come from?
It was just honestly that I couldn't run it 2 jobs forever. You got to pick a side at one point. And I thought, in 90 days, I'm picking one side. So in 90 days, I'm wrapping this up and I'm killing this idea, or I'm doing it.
And I guess in your case, it's because it's very similar, like your day job to your business.
Not necessarily. Like I think so. So for me, it was. I mean, in banking, like you pull like 60 hours is a light week. You know what I mean? And so you're dealing with not a lot of time. And when you're working, basically, essentially every hour that you're awake, like you're gonna drop the ball somewhere, right? You're either gonna drop the ball in your business, and when it's that new, oh man, like you could kill the whole thing. Or you're gonna drop the ball at work, and then they're gonna ask what's up. They're gonna maybe come down on you pretty hard. It's gonna make you less motivated. Like you're just gonna lose it. And so it's also it's about finding you gotta find that time, but you also have to put a cap on it. If you want to try to work 100 hours a week for 6 months, you probably could. You'd have a much easier time doing that on your own business full time than you would 50 hours on your current job that you don't really like anymore, and 50 hours on your business, so you kind of got to pick a side at one point. You can't diddle around. So for me, the 90-day plan was crucial. It also helped me for my own perspective, tell all my friends, tell all my family, etc. like, this is it. And you're starting to call it out. You're starting to say, okay, 90 days I'm going to make my decision, and that increases the pressure on you. It makes you have to either deliver or you got to cut it off, because you're calling people. Like, if you want to hold yourself accountable, start talking to people. We're going to do this, right? And part of it, I mean, we're doing it right now. Like, we're talking about the business that we're doing, and now we gotta come out here, and in 6 months we gotta still be around, and we better be serving some clients, right? Because we're on film, we're talking about it. That's the pressure, right? And that's I think a really helpful motivator.
We're also going to include like a link. Hopefully you have the name ready, and the website, and so people can check you out. And then one thing you were talking about telling your inner circle or your family, your friends. Is that also how you started building your client base, or kind of going to networking events? I know we met at FinTech TO, for example, you and me. Is that kind of how you built the business, or how did you go about it?
So for me, we were targeting sort of like we developed a target market, and then we just started to talk to them. So you can imagine, I don't know, say you're dealing with millennials. That's pretty easy. But you kind of have to, so there's two things to that. If you're going to do market research, you got to make sure that you get rid of what's called, you got to make sure people don't test the mom test, I think is what it's called, where somebody knows you, or they know you're invested in the idea, and so they want to just tell you what you want to hear. Because nobody's going to tell you that your idea is stupid unless they don't know that A, it's your idea, or they don't know you. Then they're willing to give you that. So you kind of got to get that degree of separation. So if you're going to do millennials, you want to talk to friends of friends, and you want to make sure that your friend who's introducing you isn't saying, oh, here's James, this is his idea. Like, no. They need to say, like, James has a startup idea, he likes to ask you some questions about it. Then you go in, you start to talk to them. It's more objective. They don't know you, they don't owe you a thing. And you're going to get a much better understanding of that. If you're talking to boomers, go to your parents. Get a parent's colleague you've never met. That's a perfect example. And then maybe get your friend to interview them instead. So instead of it being like, my mom goes up to her colleague and say, hey, my son's got a startup idea. Not going to pass the mom test, right? But if, hey, my son's friend's got a startup idea, and your friend calls, they don't know it's your idea, perfect. So trying to do things like that is really, I think, is how you do it. So find your target market, then start to do it. We started going to like the FinTech TO and those sort of tech TO events, things like that in the city. Once we got out here, and we've actually started being on it full time, but before then I wasn't going after it. I'm sure it's also actually a pretty good way to meet people and to talk to people as well. Just wasn't a way that I did it. So cool. I know we talked about a lot of different things. Is there what's the one thing you want people that are watching this that you want them to take from our chat? I think that it comes down to, if you have a job and you have an idea, make them both work at the same time. Don't react too quickly. Don't jump into it, because when you've jumped into it and there's assumptions that you made on the fly or emotionally, or you leave your job too quickly, or you burn your bridges, I think that's when you're going to really make it hard for you to succeed. And it's so hard for any of them to succeed that you really want to stack the odds in your favor. So I think it's really about holding the line, making sure that you make an exit, and that you're focusing on having everybody feel positive when you leave. You don't have to be best friends with them, but they got to be positive. And so I think that's really important for anybody who's in a job right now, who's trying to get out, is just, keep your nerve, keep going, head down, get it done, and then once you're out, you can kind of get after it 100% of your time.
Cool. Well, in that note, we'll finish. I appreciate you having me in your office, and then like I said, we're gonna include the website and all that stuff at the bottom.
Perfect.
And I appreciate you.
Thanks for
having
having
a friend. Chat soon.